Thanks for listening to the AI for Sales podcast with host Chad Burmeister. This episode is brought to you by BDR.ai, Nooks.ai, and ZoomInfo, the go-to market intelligence platform. Nooks.ai is the agent workspace for intelligent outbound. By pairing human judgment with AI execution, reps focus on relationships, not busy work. Join Intercom, Deal, and over 1,200 customers who use Nooks AI dialing, coaching, or multi-channel AI sequencing to double their pipeline. And ZoomInfo gives your revenue teams the data and insights they need to find, engage, and win their best customers, helping you move faster, work smarter, and grow revenue at scale. Want an introduction to one of our sponsors? Head to www.scr.ai/intro and unlock your direct line to more closable pipeline, powered by AI. Until next time, keep leading the AI for Sales revolution, and remember, in sales, time kills deals. But in AI for Sales, AI kills time.
Welcome back to another AI for Sales podcast. I'm Chad Burmeister, your host, and today we are with the Chief Sales Officer from Templafy, Jean-Marc Chanoine, all the way from New York. And I'm excited to have him on the show because he's been the Chief Sales Officer for the last year, but he's been with Templafy for 7 years. And who in tech these days have been with their company for 7 years? Jean-Marc has. So Jean-Marc, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, and Chad, thank you for having me. Yeah, 7 years has been a long journey, but really we've been solving these core business problems for a while, and they're always changing. So even though it's been 7 years, it's felt like, 7 1-year jobs. Let's put it that way.
So I can see that, especially with the advent of AI and how fast it's been moving. I can only imagine the employee suggestion box around Templafy and all of the capability that's possible these days. I love to start with the question around AI transformation from the customer perspective, because a lot of us as vendors, we like to talk about our cool new things and how we can change the world. But talk to me from a customer perspective of someone, using and being part of maybe one of the presentations that your team's delivering for them. How does the customer's experience change by getting to use your platform?
No, absolutely. That's a fantastic question. And I can tell you in the past 2 years, everything has changed. And I think one of the biggest things is the availability of information, especially via LLMs. You can now go into ChatGPT, you can go into Claude, you can ask questions about what are the various platforms that are available for you to use, and you're getting a pretty deep answer. And what we've found is that those answers, it's not that they're hollow, it's that they're working off of publicly available information. And so unlike, I would say, 5 years ago, where organizations were relying on you to provide that info. So, okay, who are your competitors? That's something that they would ask us in those cases, and we'd give that information, explain the differences. But what we're seeing is customers are a lot more well prepared. In addition to that, unlike SaaS, there's this big pressure from the market, from the board, from CEOs to say, great, how do we survive in the next 10 years? And I know the big statement out has been, hey, if you're not pushing AI, you're not going to make it. And so a lot of that pressure tends to force organizations to make some tough, very quick decisions without necessarily having use cases fully developed in those scenarios. So what we've been seeing and what we do is we're essentially I would say the best document agent in the world, right? What we're able to do is to create content directly from a organization's LLM and make sure that not only brand, content, data, information is accurate. And so the space we play in tends to touch all parts of organizations. Now, what we've seen is that there tends to be the approach of saying, great, who's our foundational model provider, right? So whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic or whoever it might be. Now, the next layer of that is, what do you do with it? And that's really been the big challenge that we've seen. So really, if you take a step back and think about it, information is extremely readily available. And so for us, that puts us in a position to not only have to compete with like-for-like platforms, but also competing with the foundational models because they do have free capabilities oftentimes, not as good as what we do, but oftentimes the CIO is disconnected from how work is being done. So on the surface, sometimes it's challenging for them to see the difference. So it's a whole nother ball game between new competitors, new capabilities, more information available, pressure from the market. And so for us, we've been riding that wave. Each time the wave changes, right, we adjust a little bit and we get through it.
Well, the last time I remember going through a shift in terms of how presentations were delivered was with a company called Ring Central that
Hmm.
does unified communications and voice over IP technologies. And the company was used to going in and saying, "Let me show you how we're the Gartner Magic Quadrant leader," and all this amazing stuff. And we've been around for 20 years and all these things, and really just educating the customer on who we are and why we're awesome. And then the leadership came in and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, we're going to make this all about the customer." And it took a lot of change management to get to a place where the slide decks started becoming all about the customer. I have to imagine with a tool like yours, the change management becomes a little bit easier when it comes to rolling out slides that are more focused on the customer rather than the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the core capabilities we help organizations with is, what does good look like? Right? Instead of relying on the end user having to figure it out each and every time, what we allow organizations to do is ultimately to program Templafy to give them the best possible outlook. Like, what are the best slides that should be included? What are the best visuals? What's the right data? And really the key thing we're helping organizations with is, how do you one shot it? And what I mean by one shot it is, the user can put in a pretty simple prompt in those cases. And we ask the follow up questions to make sure that whatever the output is meets the need. And so if you think about it from a sales perspective, throughout the entire commercial process, each stage tends to be an artifact, right? A document. Whether that document is the initial pitch deck, whether the next document is a product description, whether the next document is an ROI deck, then the penultimate document in that case would be whether it's a contract or a proposal that has data that comes from disparate sources, that might come from Salesforce, that might come from Gong. In essence, what we do is we allow the organization itself to tell users what good looks like, while also allowing users the freedom to leverage their favorite platforms. And usually in this case, let's say it's an M365 document, whether it's Word or PowerPoint or an email. We still allow the user to be able to leverage their creativity, but at the same time, they're getting an output that's structured in such a way that it actually delivers the outcome that they want, while making sure, and I don't want to use the word control, it's the wrong word. It's just making sure that the quality's up, accuracy's up. And so the end user isn't running around trying to figure out what good looks like. They're not emailing their coworkers being like, "Hey, do you have an example of this?" We're just allowing the individual rep or the manager, whoever it may be, to be superpowered. And that whenever they create content, it looks like they had a whole marketing team working with them for that final output.
Wow, that's the definition of what AI can enable companies to do. I mean, what you just described is what I've been seeing transition over the last 5 to 7 years, where, it was a pipe dream 7 years ago where it might personalize, the AI could personalize the first sentence in an email to the buyer. And now it's gotten so advanced that it can personalize the entire presentation and really make the rep look like an A+ performer. And that's just magic. Can you talk a little bit about maybe a case study? I remember way back in the day, to date myself, when they brought in laptops to FedEx, and that was a big deal. They were like, "All right, we're going to bring in laptops, and then we can go into office buildings and present on a laptop instead of printing it out on a piece of paper." And I think it was just before my time, but I remember the stories of when laptops were rolled out, and it was such a huge lift. Can you talk about, you know, what's the transformation look like when you deploy an automated AI powered technology like this? I mean, is it a 5% increase in sales? How does it show up in the outcomes?
Absolutely. We've collected a lot of ROI, and they're a bit different for different styles of organizations. So in the professional services space, we've seen a 75+% decrease in the amount of time that reps are spending creating content. And so oftentimes people think that, there's one proposal and then there's a response. No, there can be, especially in enterprise sales, dozens of decks created from architecture content through essentially outcomes content to product descriptions to, I mean, you name it. And so oftentimes when you think about being an account executive, what you're doing is you're making it easy for the buyer to communicate your value up top, right? And so what's happening here is a dramatic reduction in the amount of time that it takes in order to deliver that content to a prospect, which ultimately allows a single rep to handle way more customer engagements in that case. Another core stat that we have, one company had a 14% increase in close rate. Well, why? The reason why is that each individual rep and the content they created, it was extremely accurate, it was high quality, and we're humans. And it might sound a little weird, but the quality of the content that you get from an account executive or whoever you're dealing with is a direct reflection of the quality of the organization. And so what they saw is they're in a hyper competitive landscape. And what they saw was a 14% increase in their win rate because, again, they came out with better content faster. And now, especially with organizations, I don't want to use the headcount reduction piece, but you're seeing a lot of churn out, especially in tech, right? It's all over the news. So this is no secret. It's all about efficiency. Well, how much can you do with the same number of people or fewer people? And what we're allowing organizations to do is to operate essentially at lower costs with a higher conversion rate. So we are seeing essentially changes in conversion based on leveraging Templafy in those cases. So it's a question of time savings, higher conversion rates, and just being able to deal with more while not losing quality in those cases. And the organizations we work with span everything from banking. We're deployed at a 100,000 person bank to nearly 30,000 employees. Within the big four alone, we have 250,000 users. Even organizations that sell watches leverage Templafy. So it's, if you're a seller, if you're someone in a commercial space, you know how valuable content is. So we tend to touch each component, and ROI tends to look a little bit different for each organization. But what we've seen is that they do get a lot of value out of leveraging Templafy document agents.
Just last week on the show, I had someone that was an early employee of Alibaba, which is the
Yeah,
Amazon of China. And
not a
she
bad one.
said there was a date in time that she remembers when she worked there, when it used to be that all products had to be personalized and customized with the price, the picture of the product, all of it, all manually by human beings. And one day they snapped their finger and it was all moved to AI powered, where the price was moved up and down in autonomous fashion and it was all empowered down to the AI level. And she said for a time there, they were working what was called a 996,
Ooh.
9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. And she said, I hope that doesn't come to your world because there was no fun in those days. But they got to this point where they deployed that at scale and it just flipped the pancake. Everything changed from that day forward at Alibaba. And she said that's when she knew the world was going to change in a dramatic way. And what you're describing of what you guys have been able to do with 250,000 people and a huge segment of the big four is is again proving that model that's where we're moving. It's really impressive to see and understand that you've been at this for a while. Um, what about the misconceptions around AI? We talked a little bit about this is going to eliminate all the jobs out there. Um, I'm finding it to be more the Iron Man suit, and the people who use AI are the ones who can be proficient. Certainly, it will have an impact if your job is, rote doing something that's not very valuable. Then you may run into a buzzsaw. But what misconceptions do you find when it comes to AI?
I find there are a lot of misconceptions. I think the number one I call it the magic button problem. A lot of organizations, when they essentially get a chat bot, and I hate to use that term, that's a little bit too, I think, lowly for what it is. But when they sign up with a core LLM and have the default application, they think that immediately they're going to get some ROI. And I know we've all seen the MIT study that's saying like 95% of AI projects fail, or we've seen a McKinsey study that, again, the ROI isn't there. Well, yeah, the ROI isn't there because any AI model needs context, right? And one of the things we figured out is that we're a context engine. We're the orchestration layer to allow for content to be created and to maintain that level of quality that's absolutely necessary. Just because you leverage AI doesn't mean that quality can go down. And so early on, if you looked at the marketing, and I'll leave these companies unnamed because we're partners with everyone, you saw their demos. It was this magic button that someone put in a prompt and immediately got a great result. The note they then put at the bottom is that, one, you need to be really good at prompting. You needed to provide it the right context. You need to, in essence, create your own skills. It requires a top 1% AI person to get even a moderate result as compared to the demo that they were showing. So in 2024, when everybody started jumping on the train and the pressure was coming down, they're like, great, here you go, figure it out. And that's just not how it works, right? I think the biggest misconception is that you can just buy the default application from a foundational model provider, whether it's an OpenAI or an Anthropic or a DeepSeek or whatever it may be, and you're going to immediately get ROI. No, you're going to get research faster if you make the integrations great, but there isn't a magic button. It still requires configuration. It still requires work. And it does require some centralization of available data for these particular applications. So I think the biggest misconception is, yay, I bought this, I'm going to get all of this ROI. No, it does require some work, especially with agents. And I think the other one is agentic AI is going to solve all our problems. Again, you're not going to get away with some of the upfront work that you needed to do with RPA, right? So in that case, yes, you had to be extremely deterministic for it to work. Up front with agents, you don't have to be as deterministic, but yeah, you have to call out exactly what needs to occur so that way the optionality is available to the agent, and you have to have the data pipeline for it to work. I think those are two of the major misconceptions around like, great, we've adopted it, where's all of our ROI? Also, a lot of the employee reductions you've seen have nothing to do with essentially AI working well. It has to do with the fact that they're spending a lot of money, and at some point they need to reduce costs because there's no way. I think it was may have been Mark Andreessen or whomever said it. It's like, look, man, like back in December, we were in a scenario where these things weren't able to do XYZ work, and all of a sudden you're talking about 5 months later we're terminating people in order to in essence because of AI, right? And I can tell you with absolute certainty from speaking to a lot of CIOs it's not the case. They need to balance the books, and they're spending a lot on LLMs. And right now what we're seeing is they're planning for the future. And maybe it's the right answer. Maybe in 5 years, it was the right answer to make these investments up front. But I can tell you that today, that's not the case. Like AI is not replacing employee productivity in the same way that what's being stated. It's being overblown right now. But in 5 years, yeah, it might be something a bit different, right? So there's a lot of misconceptions out there and a lot of perception issues and a lot of BS demos that are out there. But I do think when you think in 10 years, absolutely, you're going to get into a reckoning in with AI and employees. But I actually think the opposite. I think there's going to be a lot more new opportunities for individuals within organizations. If your job is simply taking data from one point to another, I think that's going to get eliminated. I do think folks coming out of college are going to have some challenges. That's going to be real because oftentimes those were learning jobs, right? The productivity wasn't there, and you're hoping in 2 years they would actually be productive. One space where I think there's major change, where there isn't a misconception, has to do with coding. because ultimately coding is a language, and what AI is really good at is language in those cases. So with the right supervision, I do see a big change in that space.
Nooks.ai is the agent workspace for intelligent outbound. By pairing human judgment with AI execution, reps focus on relationships, not busy work. Join Intercom, Deal, and over 1,200 customers who use Nooks AI dialing, coaching, or multi-channel AI sequencing to double their pipeline.
Yeah, big time. You know, the visual of this video of a robot that was programmed to be a pizza maker comes to mind. I just saw it yesterday, and this robot was just banging its head and its body into the desk, and this poor pizza crust was just on the table getting massacred. And I was like, that's just, that's the 95% failure rate that you talked about from that McKinsey study a little bit ago. I think there was this opinion that, hey, if the robot can do backflips and do all this neat stuff, why can't it just do everything? And in reality, there's a lot of those kinds of challenges where, I re-educated my business development team of the term that we've used for a long time: crawl, walk, run. And I still think we're in the crawl phase, although it sounds like your company's in the run phase for your customers. You are the magic button for your customers, it sounds like. So
It's we are the magic button, and there's some upfront configuration, right? There's no free lunch is the current, I'd say, the current statement. It's making sure that you have the right staffing available, the right people from an organizational perspective, in which case allows you to leverage essentially AI in the most productive manner.
I heard you say something that captured my attention, which was, it's the creativity is still in the mind of the user of the
Correct.
software. And I love that, because as a user of AI, I've experienced that, right? Whether I'm doing a song on suno.ai or whatever it is, I can still control and direct the AI. It still starts from my mental state and my creativity. Um, how do you balance the automation with the personal touch? How do you coach your customers on that? How do we as a society kind of make sure that there's always a balance between personal touch and AI?
I think the key is that AI superpowers the individual. And so if you're hardworking, if you're creative, if you're curious, what ends up happening is that you can multiply all of those great, let's say, attributes as an individual. And the job of the organization is to provide them tools like a Templafy, right? To allow the individual to do what they need to do with a few guardrails, right? Which is because there is the right quality, right? There is, if you work at Deloitte, for example, there is a level of quality that reflects the organization that you want to be putting out there. But at the same time, you don't want to kill creativity, because that's where innovation happens. And I think what I'm seeing right now is a lot of these new applications that are coming out, including us and other companies, what they're doing is making sure that when someone is expressing that creativity, that yeah, they stay in some form of lanes to make sure that the quality of the output is great. And so what we're seeing is, if you're great, it makes you, let's I'll just say super great, right? It superpowers the individuals that are going to be awesome anyway, regardless of the tools that they have, at the same time allowing them to multiply their effect on the organization. And even on the music front, right? I've made some music in the past. Now you don't need a full-on orchestra in order to get the right background sound. You can actually leverage AI to do that, but it doesn't take away from your ability to create something brand new that touches people in the right way.
Yeah, that's amazing. Speaking of other technologies, as a chief sales officer, I'm sure you get pitched from time to time. Are you seeing anything out there that's intriguing to you?
I think a couple cool ones. I think Gong is doing a really good job of, in essence, capturing information. And if you think about Gong, I mean, they're relatively OG for the, let's say, AI market, and they've always done the call recordings. But really, for us as an organization, we leverage it deeply, and it allows, in essence, it frees up time for employees not to necessarily be taking, all these detailed notes all the time, and can actually pay attention on their calls. In addition to that, helps increase some forecasting accuracy because you're seeing the essentially the first level data, in essence, a summarization of it, and also being able to tap into the source material. That's actually one of the values that Templafy has. It's not just that we help organizations create content with document agents, they can actually tap into source content, right? And the source content is essentially a source of truth. If the marketing team, let's say product marketing, has distributed core content about a specific product, right? An end user, a salesperson, can not only create new content, but can tap into the original content very easily directly within M365. Another interesting one I've seen recently is Win AI. That one, again, live coaching, right? Which is a lot of solutions out in the market. What you end up doing is post call, you look back and say, okay, great, here's what happened. Here's what we should do next. But what we're seeing now is new, essentially, software that allows you, while having the conversation, to help give you an answer without you necessarily actively looking for it. It's actually answering questions right then and there. And so if you look at the market right now, those are just two examples. There's thousands of them. I think Unify, GTM, that's another one for the outreach component. The AI SDRs, we're not there yet. It's still one of those stages where you still need, I'd say, SDRs to some degree, because there has to be a human touch. The accuracy is not fully there yet. But what we're seeing is an evolution to eliminate, I'd say, manual work. Similar to us, right? Our big thing is we're eliminating manual document work. And what we're seeing is it's reducing the amount of non-strategic work. So you can actually focus on having a conversation, thinking, being essentially a thought advisor, being a trusted advisor for the organizations you work with.
I remember meeting Amit from Gong for the first time, the CEO,
Yeah.
many years ago in San Francisco at a small event at this bar on the second level. And I remember thinking, Gong, are you guys a gamification vendor? And then he described what they do. And I said, oh, got it. Okay, you guys are going to change the world. So to hear you say OG now, from remembering that conversation when they were first to market and the pioneer and innovator in the space, is pretty amazing and makes me think back to all those days. And then another one, Balto Software, has been in the space of the real-time coaching for probably the last 5 to 8 years. But they're not as well known out there, and they coach a lot of, I think, call center kind of companies at real high volume, 100+ employee level. So there's just the technology is so accessible now with the advent of AI, where in the past you might have to buy 100 users and spend $100,000, $200,000. Now you can access the kind of technology we're talking about for a couple $1,000. So it's pretty compelling and neat. Last couple of questions, and then we'll get out of here. Ethical considerations. I like to ask the question, whose responsibility is it? Context. I heard you talk about the term responsible AI comes up a lot. Whose responsibility is responsible AI in the world we live in today?
I think at the end, it's going to go back to the humans, right? I'm a lawyer by training, and we have rules of ethical responsibility, right? And no matter what technology you throw, at least, and I'm using the legal example here because it's ethical behavior so well defined, right? We have an entire book of rules of ethics of things you should do or shouldn't do under different circumstances. And it doesn't, and at least back then, you had a legal aid, you had a secretary, you had a paralegal, you had all these people, but the responsibility still lied with the attorney. And so the reason I bring up that example is that the responsibility for AI falls on the end user and what they're doing, right? The same ethical considerations you had as a commercial leader or CEO or CTO, you can't then say, hey, look, the AI did it, right? It's a tool. right? And it's a very advanced hammer, but it's a hammer nonetheless. And I think people talk about artificial intelligence, consciousness. It's not conscious, right? It's an algorithm. So if you eliminate the whole, hey, I didn't do it, the AI did it, or you unleash an agentic system that does something absurd, or you have this platform that discriminates against people because the previous data set was discriminatory, no, you don't get away with that. The facts are that yes, the core, let's say, AI organizations that are providing the LLMs, yes, they have responsibility for you not to make a bomb recipe. I get that. Yes, don't allow it to do something like that. But ultimately, the people that are leveraging the tool have the responsibility and should be held responsible when something goes off the rails. And that's my feel. The human doesn't get to hide behind the AI. Just because the car is self-driving, if it screws up, well, you're still behind the wheel. So I think we want to find responsibility and new defendants, plaintiff lawyers on that bit. But no, you as the individual leveraging the solution at whatever level ultimately hold the responsibility for the outcomes that come from that.
That's my favorite answer, and I've probably asked it 260 times. So, Jean-Marc, you are the winner of that question
Thank
because
you.
it's
I
amazing. Yeah,
appreciate it.
the
Thank you.
beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, we're the ones that are responsible at the end of the day. It's an advanced tool, and it comes back to us. If we're going to build this advanced, sophisticated system, someone's responsible for it. If I'm the architect, then architect it professionally with ethics in
Exactly.
mind. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can't run from our own responsibility. It's like if you wield it, you are responsible for the ultimate outcome. It's just like if one of my reps sends a terrible presentation, AI, no AI, they are responsible for that presentation or contract or document, whatever it is. There is no excuse that the AI did it.
Yes, that's great. Okay, last question, and that is what skills do sales professionals need to thrive in this AI augmented future that we're and present that we are living in today?
I think number one is prompting. You got to be able to prompt the platforms to sometimes get the outputs that you need, and also it's the ability to create agentic workflows on your own. I think it's going to become extremely core. The real winners are going to be those that are able to multiply their time and capabilities. It's really whether your organization's leveraging Claude or ChatGPT for enterprise, it's pushing it to its edge. It's experimenting with it. It's leveraging it to do territory mapping. It's making sure that you're able to squeeze as much as you humanly can out of the platforms that are provided. In addition to that, it's not just being internally curious, it's being about externally curious. It's finding out what other reps are doing. It's looking at the market. What's cool is you can actually go on these AI platforms and do your own research to figure out you can ask it what you can do with it, which is pretty cool. That's something you've never had before. So I think the real winners are going to be those that are able to create their own flows, their own systems, their own processes within the confines of the process created by organizations. Because one of the key things I've seen is that there's only so much the org can do, right? There's only so many options on how to cut books. There's only so many options on how to run a commercial process. And what we're seeing is a thinning of the middle. What I mean by you can't, it's going to be very hard to be middle management in the long run. You're just seeing the bottom and the top start getting closer and closer together. So you as the individual seller or even the manager, you're going to have to start doing things that ultimately enhance the process that's already been delivered in order for you to do well. So from a skill set perspective, it is really deeply learning I'd say the edges of whether it's leveraging Copilot Studios, whether it's leveraging Claude, whether it's even leveraging essentially all of these coding solutions there. Doesn't mean that you're going to create some complex application, but you can create, in essence, tools that you can leverage individually that fit exactly the process that you're running. And I would say that's going to become extremely important in the next, I'd say, 5 years.
Yeah, I love it. The example comes to mind where the company that I sold and exited 2 years ago
Mm.
did managed LinkedIn for customers. And we did that because we got really, really good at LinkedIn prospecting. And if you try to give it to an individual rep inside of a company, it's hit or miss, right? It's down to a rep. But if you put it in the hands of one really, really good professional that knows exactly what they're doing and can rinse and repeat, and then if you can automate more of that and have an AI, train the AI on how to do it. So now I'm in the process of hiring one person who can run 50 of those accounts, not just 1, 2, or 5, but 50, and drive $10 million to $20 million a month of pipeline. That's leverageable. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, I believe, in this new world that we're entering into.
Yeah, and I think one note here, there's always been this concept of the 100x engineer. I think you're going to start running into the 100x salesperson, because a 100x salesperson is going to know how to leverage these outreach solutions. They're going to know how to leverage a Templafy to create all of their content for their commercial processes. They're going to be able to leverage Gong to its limits. And so this concept of, if you give somebody a Templafy document agent and they get really good, they're going to be able to do the job that used to take 40, 50 hours in 5. So you're going to get these 100x sellers, these folks that can essentially create their own businesses solo within the organization. It's going to be a really cool future.
Love it. Well, really enjoyed having you on the show today, Jean-Marc. Thank you so much for being here. And if people want to reach you, it's templafy.com is the website. How would they reach you directly?
Absolutely. They could find me on LinkedIn. It's Jean-Marc Chanoine, but also Templafy.com. And also Templafy is available for free for individuals to use. It won't have all the enterprise features, but it's absolutely a great way for them to test Templafy by using it during their day-to-day. So go to Templafy.com, leverage the free version of Templafy. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, hey, I'm here. It's Jean-Marc Chanoine.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks, everyone, for joining another AI for Sales podcast.
Of course. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the AI for Sales podcast with host Chad Burmeister. This episode was brought to you by BDR.ai, Nooks.ai, and ZoomInfo, the go-to market intelligence platform. Nooks.ai is the agent workspace for intelligent outbound. By pairing human judgment with AI execution, reps focus on relationships, not busy work. Join HubSpot, Deal, and over 1,200 customers who use Nooks multi-channel AI sequencing to double their pipeline. And ZoomInfo gives your revenue teams the data and insights they need to find, engage, and win their best customers, helping you move faster, work smarter, and grow revenue at scale. Want an introduction to one of our sponsors? Head to www.scr.ai/intro and unlock your direct line to more closable pipeline, powered by AI. Until next time, keep leading the AI for Sales revolution, and remember, in sales, time kills deals. But in AI for Sales, AI kills time.